In this video, I'll be going over the match and index functions to look up a value. Right, so this is our Excel file. We have information about order, and then we have information about returns. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to match returned order ID with the returned product name. Let's match this with let's match this first with the row ID, and then we'll match it by region or product ID. All right, so let's start with row ID. So we want both because there are for each order ID there might be multiple items, so we want to make sure that we are getting the exact row for both the order ID and the product name. So to do this, we'll first use the match function. So match, lookup value, what are the ones that we want to match with? So this is what we want to look up. So this and the product name. Okay. Where will we look it up from? What is the lookup array? So look up all values from order ID. So shift control down. We go up again. And then select. So all the lookup from all the order IDs and all the order product names. Shift control down. All right, perfect. So now we have the lookup array. Next, we will specify what kind of match type. So exact match. There is another function, match X or X match, where it by default matches with the exact match. All right, then. Okay, so we have the match. So this will only return the relative position for the product ID and product name. So it will just tell us where. So in this array, where is it positioned for it? So it will basically give us the row number for that. Right. So 6972. So this is the order ID CA 2017 15 38 22 Sony Microvolt Click. Right, so let's go to 6,700. I forgot the number. 6,972. You could also look it up with Control F. So 6972. Not this. All right, 6972. So you can see this is CA 2017 1538 22. And it did look up the Sony Microvolt, whatever that is, Volt Click. Okay. All right, so we just got the first one. We want to do the same for the next one, where it would look up this. So CA 2017 129,707 with this product name. So let's see what happens when we drag this. If we drag it down for one, let's see how it changes. Yes, these are the ones that we want to look up, so that's good. Let's look at the lookup array. Now if you look at the lookup array, we can see that it has missed the first one, right? So we want it to look up from the entire array. If we drag this down, it's going to move in the same way, right? It's going to miss one row each time, so we don't want that. So let's delete this. So to avoid that, we are going to be using absolute referencing. So basically taking these and blinging them, putting dollar signs. You can do that at once. So function F4. All right, now that we have used absolute referencing, you can see the second one, it is still looking up the second, the second returned order. But when we go to the lookup array, the lookup array did not change. It is utilizing the entire lookup array. Okay, so don't forget to use absolute referencing for that part. All right, so we looked up the row ID. So the row ID, it matches exactly with the relative position. So in this case, it is neat. We can just use the match function to find that. But instead of the row ID, if we were looking at something else, something more specific related to this order ID and product name, we won't just be, it will just give us the relative position, but it wouldn't give us the value for that variable or for that specific category. So say we want to look up the product ID. Okay, so this specific product name will have a product ID for this returned order ID. So let's do that. So product ID. So if in the same way we just use the match function first, so match lookup value, so look up this and the product name. So look up both the returned order ID and the returned product name, and then look it up from the order ID array and your, so I'm scrolling up, and your product name. Oh, my bad. Order ID and product name. Right, and we want an exact match, so 0. And we are going to be using absolute referencing. Let me scroll it here. Okay. And we will be using absolute referencing for the lookup array. So select F4. Enter. All right, so this gave us the relative position, but it did not give us the product ID, right? So what we want is we want this to be matched for the 6,972 relative position of product ID. So we can do that using the index function. So keep this will be nested in the index function. So next we'll use the index, which is going to return the value for product ID at that relative position. So now we need to mention for which array we are trying to find that. So for product ID, so shift control down, right? Don't forget to add the comma for this. And so what we just did is we are saying that for this row or column number, you don't have to give the column number, just maybe the row number. So for this row number, look up the value from product ID, right? And then close the parentheses for index function. So let me see if I'm missing something. Oh, I used period instead of comma. Okay. Right, so let's go and see what it returned. Right, so it's tech AC 10,109. So let's go to 697, row 6972. A little bit more. Right, row ID 6972. You might have found it before me. Right, so there you go. That's our product ID. Tech AC 10,109. All right, so it did pick up the correct one. So let's see what we need to use absolute referencing for. We need to fix this as well, the array. So the array for product ID, so that that does not move and we're not missing certain variables from certain product IDs. F4. Okay. All right, let's double click. This one's probably easier to look up, so let's check this one. So this is in row 57 for CA 2016 111,682. Right, so let's see if that matched. So 57 111,682. Right, so it does look like it did. Off PA 1,015.69. Off PA 1,015.69. All right, great. So that worked. So now we have the product ID. So what we did over here is we used both the match and the index function. So the match function gives us the relative position. So if you select the array, it's going to tell you in the selected array which row number it is in. So that's what the match function returned. And then the index function, that's the one that actually helped us match it. So for this index number, for this relative position in your array for our product ID array, what is the value at that position? So that's what the index function gave us. When you're using this, just be mindful of what you are blinging or what you are fixing as your absolute reference. So those usually would be the arrays. What will change is the lookup values. So these ones that you're selecting, those are the ones that will be changing. Be careful with the parentheses. So over here we have two functions, one and the second one. So be sure to close that. Okay. So that returned our product ID. The next thing that I'll show you is there is an easier way of doing this. If your data is presented in a table, you'll see that a lot of these like absolute referencing, you don't have to do that. It becomes much easier in that sense. So what I'll do now is I'm going to erase these and we'll try to redo it with a table setting. Shift Control down, delete. All right. So for this, I'll first create tables. So format as table. Let me select my range. So from here, Shift Control right, Shift Control down. Okay. So I've selected the entire table. Yes, my table has headers at the top. If you notice, it does have headers. Okay. All right, so there you go. So now we have one table. I want to rename this as orders. Next, I'll create another table for this, return order information. Let's select the date. I think it already did. Does it have the entire one? Oh wait, I'm having trust issues, so I'll select it. Shift Control left, Shift Control down. Okay. And my table has headers. Okay. All right, so now we have another table for our returns. Let me rename this to returns. Right, if you are trying to rename them, those are under table design. So this tab over here, and then table name returns. All right then. So let's try to redo that again, but now under the table settings. So row ID, this is equal to match, lookup value, this, and so returned order ID and your returned product name. We have the lookup value. Let's set the lookup array. So lookup array is the entire order ID, and scroll up, all product names. Right, so those are the ones we want to look up. And then next you have match type 0. So see, for this, just solving for 1, it automatically gives us the values for the rest. So I think it's much easier once you have it set up as a table, so you don't have to worry too much about the absolute referencing. And then product ID, this will be, again, we'll do the same match. And then for product ID, we're going to do the same. Let's start with the match function. So match lookup value this, your returned order ID, and the returned product name. Lookup value, or sorry, lookup array, order ID, and product name. Match type. So let me go back to this so you can see what happens on it. Okay. Match type 0. There you go. Right, so you can see it did find the same ones. Right, now that we have the match, let's index it. Index, started the parentheses, so array, I wanted to match it with the product IDs. Shift control down. Let's return this. Okay. So orders product ID, comma, that's our array, and this is our row number 6972. Let's close the parentheses, and there you go, it's all changed to product ID. Right, so we saw how to use both the match and index function, and we have used that with a table setting and then without a table setting. If you are using it without a table setting, be mindful of absolute referencing. If you are using it in a table setting, we don't have to worry too much about those absolute referencing. It sort of autofills the rest of it. Right, so I hope you found this video helpful.